Hey, how's it going there, people? This is Gary A. Swaby, and you're now listening to Turn Based, which is our RPG podcast where we talk all about JRPGs and even Western RPGs from time to time. This is the place where we discuss all of those types of games. And I'm here with Jake James Lugo today. What's up, JJ?
I'm doing good, Gary. How you been?
Been good, man. Been playing some games, so that's always good. How have you been?
Yeah, same thing here. I mean, I've been playing a lot more, probably a little bit more than you because I've been so busy. But
That's
yeah,
for sure.
I've been playing a lot of stuff, that we're going to talk about today, even, which should be fun.
Cool, cool. Yeah, so we're gonna get right into that. But just so you guys know, Turn Base is usually, Patreon exclusive show. But for today, we felt like you guys should be able to hear this because it's regarding two very popular RPG titles. So we want everybody to hear this. But if you do want to hear, more in-depth discussions about, JRPGs and RPGs in general, subscribe to our Patreon page as we drop a lot of exclusive stuff that you'll only find on there. But yeah, with that out the way, let's get straight into our thoughts on Final Fantasy 15 episode Gladiolus. I myself just finished playing this like right before the show, but I know JJ got the chance to play it a bit earlier. So JJ, what are your thoughts on episode Gladiolus after playing it?
Yeah, I had the chance to actually play this back when I was at PAX East. I had I want to say about a 30 to 45-minute demo, I want to say, give or take, of the entire episode, which it was complete by then. We just didn't get to see like the full, scope of it. So last night, actually, I actually completed it. It doesn't take that long to finish, maybe about an hour, give or take, depending if you watch all the cutscenes or if you do a bunch of other stuff throughout the episode. But overall, I think it's fine. It's okay. It's not special. It's not like something that I feel like you need to get or you need to dive into if you're, if you played Final Fantasy 15 or if you're just craving more of that world. I think that, at this point, if you've really liked Final Fantasy 15, you're going to like this episode. You're going to like all the DLC. Funny enough, they tease the next episode, which is the episode Prompto. That's going to be the next one coming out in June, which I thought was like really soon, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was definitely pretty cool. Like at first, I didn't even know what it was. Like I saw the revolver gun, and I was like,
I saw that image.
Who is
Believe
that?
it or not, that's Prompt. Yeah, I saw that image on Twitter a long time ago, and I didn't know whether that was like a fan-driven thing or if that was like another promo image or something. And I was surprised to see that it was part of the next episode. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, what was going through my mind? I was like, who is that? Because I thought for a second I thought it was Squall, but then obviously when the camera pans in, you get to see that it's Prompto. But
I
yeah,
don't know if that was
that took me.
that's a little far to me, but I knew it was Prompto once I saw the revolver. It was pretty obvious. I just didn't know he was going to be the next episode. I thought they were going to go to maybe Iggy. That I thought that'd be interesting. But again, I'm pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, definitely surprised at that. As for my thoughts on episode Gladios now, I'm a big Final Fantasy fan, so I put this series on a high pedestal, and just the thought of them doing DLC is a little daunting, especially the way they handled it with 15, because it was like they deliberately took things out so that they could repackage it and sell it later. And I feel like this is what they did with this. And to be honest, like I felt like this didn't need to exist at all. Like I wasn't really impressed with it. The actual DLC it was it was a breeze. Like I walked right through it pretty much. Like it was hardly challenging at all. I think it would have benefited from a hard mode because I think it only has normal and easy.
Yeah, but there's also that final challenge you get at the end, which I'll get to afterwards. Once you finish talking.
Yeah, yeah, but like I don't know, like I didn't feel like it was fun at any point. I just felt like it was too easy. Like it felt pointless to a degree. I was hoping, the end battle would pay off, but even that was kind of easy when you compare to a lot of other battles in Final Fantasy games. Like if you go back to, Final Fantasy 13 series, Final Fantasy 13-2 actually had some decent DLC content, and it had a very challenging boss battle where you play as Lightning, and I liked that because it felt worth it, because it was a difficult boss battle that you have to attempt multiple times before you can actually beat, you know, Caius. Like, it's a really high powered version of Caius, I think. But this, I don't know, man. Like, it just felt way too easy. A lot of the mechanics that they put in felt pointless, like being able to pull off the big pillars and fight the enemy. Like, you can bash the enemies with these gigantic pillars, but it, like, that kind of slowed down the gameplay more than anything. Like, it was pointless doing that. So I don't know why they added it.
I thought it was, you know, it was interesting, and it kind of, you know, adds a little bit of a sense of humor, you know, where Gladiolus is the tank of the entire group. So there's a lot of like fun little jokes or quirks you could get out of there, or a little bit of sense of humor from the development team of like, oh man, he's like so strong, he's taking up these pillars, and it turns into almost like a completely different game. But in the same vein, it almost feels like a different game because of the way that you're controlling Gladiolus. With Gladi, it feels more like an action hack and slash. You're not really getting a lot of RPG elements, and I don't think you're going to get that in any of the episodes as they come out, as they release. But for this one, it was still within Gladdy's character. I mean, you didn't get a lot of backstory outside of like the little side story that he had. And funny enough, I didn't even know the time frame when this actually takes place until it was somebody actually told me, or somebody explained to me on the internet. And I was like, okay, things make a little bit more sense. This is actually takes place during that time when he leaves the party for like a brief period, and I think the other guys are going to hang out with the Dragoon Knight, the chick that was the Dragoon Knight, and they're doing a bunch of other stuff. But with this one, the only problem that I really have, outside of, you know, a couple like technical hiccups here and there, I feel like the reward that you get out of completing this episode becomes completely insignificant if you've already beaten the game.
Oh yeah,
like if you've already gotten to the end game, if you're already towards your level 99 status, or you're fighting all the different terrors beneath Lucius and such, the Genji blade that you get, that I think it's a cool thing that you get something. You get that in a costume for Gladi, but the weapon I was expecting to be stronger, especially if I'm already, you know, pledging to all the DLCs or the season pass and stuff like that. I'm never going to use the Genji blade, and that kind of sucks, because I feel like that could have been another opportunity to give more people an incentive to jump into these DLCs.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose if you end up doing a new game plus, you know, anyone out there does a new game plus, they might use it then maybe. But yeah, me personally, and I know for you, like, I'm probably never going to use that blade. And, you know, another thing that bothered me about this is there's a lot of emphasis on, you know, timing your blocks. But the thing is, like, a lot of the enemies you encounter, they take ages to block. So it's like, it's pointless. Like, you can wipe out like a whole room of enemies before like any of them tries to attack you, because the AI is so bad. It only gets good like later on towards the end of, you know, the episode, where you fight more high powered enemies and stuff, and then you rely on your block a little more. But you know, I don't know, man.
There's one other thing I want to mention that I think is very important, because this is a different character, obviously different than Noctis. Gladi feels very weighty, like he feels very heavy, and even some of his actions when you're attacking and you're in the midst of combat and stuff, things feel like they take a second or two to really follow through.
Yeah.
For example, you mentioned the blocking, the parries. I didn't feel like the parries were really instantaneous, like when you were holding the guard button. I always felt like there was like some sort of drag every time I would try to go for like a parry and I wouldn't get the timing right. It would seem off. And I felt that was a problem, especially going back to what I mentioned before, the final trial, which is after you complete it and you unlock it. It's basically you're fighting Core, which is the Core the Immortal. And during this time frame, he's still alive in the story. And again, spoilers if you haven't completed Final Fantasy 15, but I think at this point, if you're diving into this DLC, you must have already completed Final Fantasy 15 at this point. But I feel like that becomes a problem in that challenge, because it's very important for you to hit those parries and be able to parry an attack and do counterattack damage, because not only do you do extra damage, but you also build up your rage meter, which helps you increase your damage that you actually deal to different enemies. And in that fight, because the timing is so important and there's that drag that just gets in the way, I was never really truly being able to parry attacks against him and then do damage. That's why I haven't at least, you know, completed that final trial yet.
Yeah, I see your point with that. But yeah, I mean, overall, I mean, it's cool if you are really into, you know, the Final Fantasy 15 series, and you kind of want to, play a bit more of it and find out what happened with Gladiolus, why he left the party at that certain point, then yeah, I would say, give it a try. Don't expect too much from it. Like as we said, it's only like an hour's worth of gameplay. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's cool for what it is.
Now, here's a better question for you. Did you expect more out of these episodes? Or at least this is the first out of like 3 episodes we're going to get. And then we're going to get the multiplayer DLC, which is a whole nother thing. But did you expect more out of this, to be honest?
Yeah, I really did. I expected a lot more. Like I thought this was at least going to be like a few hours or something of gameplay. I didn't really expect it to be over that quickly, but I know there's more episodes coming with the other characters. But yeah, I expected a bit more from this, to be
One thing I
honest.
did like, though, that I think was really cool, or at least makes sense in the context of the game, is that where these are stories, or this story is being told over a campfire with the guys, where
Yeah.
Gladiolus is explaining like what happened during that time frame. And I feel like if they do that for all the episodes and they explain like what goes down, that'll be kind of cool. I think that'll be a fun way to implement the DLC like that. Now, same like you, I expected a little bit more. What I was hoping they would do is kind of handle it in the same way where, again, this is a really far comparison, but Final Fantasy IV, the After Years, if you remember that game where it still felt like the same game, it still had a lot of the same type of mechanics compared to the original, or at least as an offshoot of the original. I was expecting something like that where there would still be more emphasis on RPG elements, where you would still be able to change gear and such on Gladdy while he was going through the trial. That's what at least where my expectations were lying. And it kind of is a shame. And I understand why that wasn't the case, especially with how complex and how tough it is to develop stuff like this. But at least that's at least where my mindset was. What I think is that we're going to get a very similar handling of episode Prompto and episode Ignis in that way. What I'm curious to know is where their stories will actually take place. If maybe we'll go back further back in time prior to the events of the game for like episode Prompto, and maybe again same thing with episode Ignis.
Yeah, I thought the episode Prompto one was going to be like where he gets kidnapped or whatever, like where they take him away. But I don't know. It seemed like, judging from that footage, it seems like that might not be the case.
I agree. And you know what I think they're going to do? Maybe they're going to actually clarify a lot of the stuff about his origin. Because remember, you find out some really big things towards the end of Final Fantasy 15 where they never really hinted at and they never really explain in full detail. That would be a great place to start, or at least episode Prompto, or at least touch upon that, because that's something I felt like a lot of people that play the game and a lot of fans of Final Fantasy 15 would get a lot out of and that they wanted to know for some time. I don't want it to be kind of brushed over, because then there's going to be that gap of information that we just don't get.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, as long as they, flesh out some more of the details behind the story and stuff, then, that's all good.
Now, here's a bigger question. Do you want episode Prompto to play very similar to how we got to this one, or do you want it to be like a shooter? Because I feel like with episode Prompto, it'd be interesting if, like, for each of the episodes, they have a almost it feels like a different genre, where episode Prompto, it plays like a third-person shooter or a first-person shooter, whichever one they could do. While Gladdy, again, you got the action-based, like, hack and slash, and then Ignis could be something completely different.
Yeah, I think that would be very cool if they made like the episode Prompto more of like a third person shooter. That would be really cool to play that style of mini game inside of Final Fantasy world, I think.
So, now, I don't know how that works in Final Fantasy 15, because remember, you could equip guns to Noctis and he could use them, kind of like Prompto's guns that he has in his equipment and stuff. But I never really used them, so I don't have a context to see how that would work in that engine.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really that great using it with Noctis. It was pretty much just a long range weapon. Like you aim at the enemy and then you hold the button as you would with any other weapon, and it shoots, kind of thing. So I mean, it wasn't that great, to be honest. But if they made it more refined and worked on the mechanics a little bit more for Prompto's episode, then I think it could be really good.
Now, here's the other thing, too, that we should also mention. Keep in mind, Final Fantasy 15 still has PlayStation VR support. It'd be cool if they did something like that and then implemented more PlayStation VR support, because then that just ups the value of that DLC, or at least of that episode.
Yeah, definitely. And I haven't even heard anyone talk about that, the VR.
Yeah, me neither.
Have they added that yet?
No, I don't think so. And maybe I could be wrong. I have not seen anything or anybody talk about that. And it was just kind of like one of those things where it was put on display both at E3 and I think it was also at PSX when I went down there. And you never heard anything else about it. Maybe down the line, maybe they start talking about that again because I know a lot of people were kind of lukewarm on the reception with that.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I'd love to see how that works, to be honest. Like, I definitely would love to try it at least.
I know it was first person. I remember seeing like the demo stuff for it. I never got to play it myself. And from what people explained about it, it was a first person experience, which makes sense because of PSVR and such.
Hmm. Yeah, maybe they could really use that with episode Prompto. I think, like, if they made it a shooter, first person, and VR, I think that could be really cool.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. But yeah, the last thing I was going to ask, we briefly talked about this before the show started, but they also updated chapter 13, and they pretty much added a section where you play as Gladios, and Ignis is there as well. And this pretty much acts as a demo for episode Gladiolus. So what are your thoughts on them adding that to chapter 13?
I think, as a demo for the actual DLC episode, it's fine. I get it. It's not really needed. Some of the changes that they did specifically for that chapter come in the form of the main game where they really up the power of Noctis's ring, the king's ring, which is crazy now because you could actually use a lot of those spells against all the enemies. If you remember beforehand, some of the spells you used to do, like death and the parry attack, the holy attack, weren't really as strong, and they didn't affect enemies or at least super strong enemies that were exceptionally powerful, especially bosses. But now they made it where it's like ridiculously OP, where you could use the death spell on the Adamantoise, which is insane to me. I would love to see how that fight plays out with that in hand. But as far as that specific section with Gladiolus, it just gives you an idea of how the mechanics are. The boss fight at the very end of it is very mediocre. It's not even that great. And it almost doesn't make sense in the context of the game, like right next to it. If you had a choice between both of those, definitely go with the original 13, chapter 13, where it has the new mechanics implemented to it, where Noctis is stronger. But if you just want to get an idea of like what episode Gladiolus is like, I guess it's fine to go through. But I don't know. Yeah, to me, I felt like it was unneeded.
Yeah, I felt like it was unneeded myself, but I understand why they did it because I remember one of the developers, I can't remember which one, but they were saying basically they put it, like, the team put in a lot of work recreating like a new system for the Gladiolus demo. I mean, the episode Gladiolus, they put a lot of work in making those new mechanics, so they wanted to kind of showcase that, within the main game kind of thing, so that the team felt like their efforts were actually being seen inside the game itself, instead of people having to buy DLC to see their efforts, basically.
I think that's reaching, honestly. I feel like that's reaching very hard because, granted, a lot of the work and the mechanics and stuff went into that is being on display in the main game, that you could just show that in a demo. Like that's how it's treated, is like a short demo. And I get that. But at that point, it just, I feel like maybe that's a little bit reaching with the reasoning behind it. It sounds cool, sounds very noble, but I don't know about that one. One of the things I want to ask you, Gary, as a longtime Final Fantasy fan, what did you think of the interpretation of Gilgamesh in this game? Because this is a different design, a different take on Gilgamesh, classic Final Fantasy summon from back in the day, or Final Fantasy character from back in the day, where in past iterations of Gilgamesh, from Final Fantasy V onward, he's always been a joke character, a lot of tongue-in-cheek, a lot of humorous stuff. But this one, he's taken very, very seriously, like the complete opposite of the spectrum, which I thought was interesting, and I thought it was kind of cool. I was waiting for like a humorous thing to pop up. It would have been kind of ironic and kind of goofy if all of a sudden at the very end you find out Gilgamesh is actually how he actually is in the rest of the other games in the series. That would have been fun, but we didn't get that. We got a very harsh, grim take on Gilgamesh. But what did you think of that?
Yeah, design wise, I didn't have a problem with it. Like, I thought he looked pretty cool. He fits within, the Final Fantasy 15 style, I think. But in terms of his character and personality, like, it's very bland to me, I think. It was very bland for the reasons you said. Like, you know, usually he has a bit more personality. He's a bit more jokey and everything. And this, he was just like, you know, serious kind
Yeah,
of.
he's the comic relief most of the time. But I thought it was cool that this was the flip side.
Yeah, yeah, but it felt bland, kind of. I don't know. Like I feel like because the demo was so short, it felt like there wasn't even really much development for him anyway. So it was. I was just a bit like, yeah, okay, whatever.
You feel like they hyped him up too much?
A little, yeah. I mean, well, I don't feel like they hyped him up that much, but um, yeah, I just feel like, you know, it wasn't that exciting to see him.
I agree.
Like, character design was good, but you know, character wise, it was just meh.
It was, and I'm surprised he didn't have like a lot of hands. Where that's like Gilgamesh's thing, where he has like a bunch of hands and each
He
hand wields a weapon.
actually has one missing in this. Like, he's got a missing arm.
Yeah, which I thought was interesting. And they tied it into the story, but I was like, okay, that's kind of meh. But I could deal with it. I could accept it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was cool though. I mean, I kind of like how they're, you know, implementing the summons and these different gods in different ways and throughout, you know, this the Final Fantasy 15 world and everything. Like, I like how they've kind of implemented them and made them different from what you're used to. But, you know, at the same time, I feel like they could have did a better job with Gilgamesh.
Agreed. Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, any final thoughts on, you know, episode Gladiolus or Final Fantasy 15 before we move on?
Yeah, I'm just excited for episode Prompto. I'm really curious to see how that one is handled. And then after that, obviously, we're going to get episode Ignis. And then maybe I think at that last point is the multiplayer, which I still don't know how that's going to work. I don't even really want that. I would rather take a separate episode, to be honest with you, but that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of interested to see what exactly the multiplayer is going to be. Like, how are they even going to handle that? Because, I mean, it doesn't like multiplayer. It's not an easy thing to do. If you spend most of your time building a single player mechanic like game and everything, it's not easy to just slap in like some add-on multiplayer mode. So I really want to see how they approach it.
If each episode is a separate type of gameplay style for each one of the characters up to that point, up to the multiplayer DLC, then I guess the multiplayer, you get to choose your style when you go on mission stuff. Because remember, the multiplayer is supposed to be separate, like side missions that you could do with like up to 3 other people in your group. So that'll be interesting. Again, just seeing how that plays out if they implement all these different styles, if that's the route that they're going.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they do it, I think. But yeah, that's pretty much it for, you know, Final Fantasy 15 and episode Gladiolus. Definitely check it out if you are interested, you know, in playing that game, and let us know your thoughts on it. But, you know, we're going to shift gears here and talk about Kingdom Hearts 1.5 and 2.5 remix for the PS4, which James Lugo here has actually played, and he's going to tell me all about it. So, JJ, what are your initial thoughts on, you know, Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 and, you know, all the rest coming to the PS4?
So I definitely have to say that we're going to have a review of it up very, very soon. It's just that right now I'm editing and writing and doing all this stuff because remember, 6 games in this collection. It's 6 Kingdom Hearts games, and these are all older games that we've seen in the previous collections. You've probably played at least a couple times. If you're a Kingdom Hearts fan, you own these games at least either on PlayStation 3 or already on PlayStation 2, or whatever platforms they were on. I think it's cool as far as value, as far as implementing or combining 6 different experiences. It's really 4 plus 2 movies from the previous collections, the 1.5 and 2.5 put together. I think it's a great value for anyone that's never played the Kingdom Hearts series and wants to get prepared before Kingdom Hearts 3 comes out. This is why this exists in the first place, because Kingdom Hearts 3 is coming out probably within the next year or two, more than likely, whenever they decide to release it and finish the game. But this is a good way to this is a good place to start for someone that's never played the series. Now, that being said, though, and this is one of the things I'm probably going to talk about a little bit more in detail in my review, this offers almost nothing to someone that's already played the games. Like you don't really need to buy this collection if you already own it on PlayStation 3, or at least the other 2 collections or 2.8 on PS4 already. You don't really need to dive into this one. The only reason why a Kingdom Hearts fan would actually dive into this outside of like owning everything Kingdom Hearts is the trophy list, because this actually has a separate trophy list from the previous releases of the game on PS3. So on PS4, you could theoretically play through the game again and get a whole another platinum trophy if you had it from the previous version. So that's interesting.
Let me just say that is amazing, because I remember I bought the Final Fantasy 10 and 10-2 collection for the PS4, and I'd already owned it on the PS3, but like the trophies were merged, so you could
they're combined
again. Yeah, exactly. So I think it's great that they're doing it like that for this.
It's actually supposed to work the way that you said it. It's supposed to be combined. I don't know why specifically for Kingdom Hearts they haven't combined the trophy list. I can understand maybe being a little bit lazy. I don't think they really did that on purpose, because that was already a couple times that they've done that. Also, another thing to note, watching the recoded movie and watching the 358 over 2 days, like cutscenes, the HD cinematics, you get no trophies for them. If you remember back on PS3 for both collections, you got trophies for watching those. And in this version, or at least this collection, you don't get that. You only get trophies for Kingdom Hearts 1 Final Mix, Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix, Reach of Memories, and Birth by Sleep. That's basically what you get out of all of them. So other than that, cool. the biggest thing that is really like the main pull for this collection for anybody that hasn't or has picked them up before is that the games are all running in HD 60 frames per second, 1080p HD 60 frames per second, and they're smoothed out. They're very similar to the previous releases, but now they're running faster. And if you remember Kingdom Hearts HD 2.8 Final Chapter Prologue, I know, guys, bear with the names. They're long. They're ridiculous. We all know this. But Dream Drop Distance in that collection, the HD version of that game, ran at 60 frames per second. So now, at this point, all the games that are on PS4 are running at 60 frames per second. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? It's a great thing in most cases. There's a few instances in all of the games where the 60 frames per second becomes a little bit of a hindrance, specifically in some of the boss fights. I know a couple people have pointed out during the Japanese release of the game, or the collection, I should say, that some of the damage values or some of the reactions and some of the actual inputs for the buttons, like when you're actually hitting that triangle input, whenever something happens, the context-sensitive inputs, those were a little out of whack in the Japanese release. And I know that Square Enix released a patch right before the game came out, and they said that they were adjusting all those issues and a few other things here and there. So right now, you're getting the complete, probably definitive version of those games to play.
That's pretty awesome. I definitely need to get this, because I did get the 1.5 collection on PS3, but I never fully beat it. So I definitely need to get this.
This is the better version, I could definitely tell you. It pretty much runs faster. The load times are super fast. Like even just going to the menus, saving your game, loading up a game. Even one of the big issues that popped up in the 2.5 release on PS3 was that when you would use the drive forms and you would go to the different forms that Sora had, it would take like a second or a couple seconds in order to load it up. After he would his power would burst from his body, it would just kind of be stuck there for a little bit before he actually changed forms. This time it's instantaneous, which is great. It's fine. So there's almost no load times in any of the games. Very, very close to it.
That's pretty awesome.
Another thing I can say, or at least it's more of a negative, but something that I noticed in the HD cinematics for both Recoded and 358 over 2, some of the cutscenes still look very pixelated. Like it has where some of the scenes that you're looking at, especially when characters or objects are far off in the distance, they get really pixelated and really out of whack. They don't look as good as the stuff that's all the way in the foreground or all the way like right in front of the camera. I don't know why that is, but it was the same thing back in the original release. I don't understand why they wouldn't touch that up or why they wouldn't notice that, because it seems like something, I don't know, maybe it's a technical issue from porting the games from the 3DS over to the PlayStation 3 or PS4, or at least the cinematics and the cutscenes. So that was a little bit weird to see that. And another thing is too, some of the cutscenes don't even run or not even presented in full frame, or at least full screen. There's instances where it almost looks like it's moving towards like standard definition format, even though it always had that letterbox or at least those black lines on the top and the bottom and some of the sides. But for some odd reason, some of the scenes look like it's a little bit more compressed. And I don't know why that is.
It could be a case of you know, maybe they couldn't find the original like texture files or, you know, the FMV files and stuff that they had, so they weren't able to, you know, upgrade them to, you know, the current
Now, that's
technique.
not a frequent occurrence. Like, that's not something that's like constantly apparent. I should say that. Like, it only happens in a few instances. Other than that, the HD cinematics are fine. I could understand why taking out the trophy list for them kind of makes sense. And it's strange enough because when you watch the other stuff from the other collections, like even in 2.8, when you watch the movie, you still get trophy stuff for it. You get all these different things just for watching them. So it's a little bit of an interesting choice for them to remove that, but totally understandable.
Yeah. Yeah, sounds good. What I wanted to ask as well is, like, you know, with the increase in the frame rate and everything, does it actually affect the combat? Like, does it feel a lot
Yes.
faster and fluid?
Yes, and when I played this at PAX, I noticed that because I played a couple different sections at PAX, both on the floor and at the appointment that we had. They had different save files, so you could go to anywhere in the game, pretty much anywhere that you wanted. You could even go to like the final boss or Lingering Will and actually see that fight in 60 frames per second. I think, in my personal opinion, some people might disagree, but I think it makes some of the fights a little bit harder. Now, that could have been because that was pre-patch, prior to them making some adjustments, because they changed some of the attack values, or at least some of the damage output from attacks, both from enemies and I think also from Sora himself or the main characters themselves. But I remember back then, and even now in some instances, it makes some of those fights a little bit harder with how you have to react, because some of the context-sensitive buttons, they don't immediately go off when you're hitting them, even though you probably got the right timing, but because things are either coming so fast at you, or because the window of opportunity to hit them has been kind of, I guess you could say, a little bit reduced because they're going so fast with 60 frames per second. You would think it's just running smoother, so it shouldn't change it, but for whatever reason, it feels different. And not in every case, but in some cases, and maybe that also gets adjusted as well down the line. But there is some changes, and some things feel different as in the combat in 60 frames per second. I said the same thing about Dream Drop Distance.
Okay. Yeah, so like with everything else that's, you know, included in the collection, have you noticed any other significant or noticeable differences compared to the previous collection?
No, these are essentially the same games that you got in those collections. It's still Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, Birth by Sleep, Final Mix, Rechain of Memories. Same, it's essentially the same exact thing, minus the other games that were in the 2.8 collection. You do get these kind of like themes for your console, for your dashboard on PlayStation 4, much like what they did in the previous collections. Every time you complete a game, or if you finish watching all the cinematics, you get that extra dynamic. I don't think it's even a dynamic theme. It's just a theme that you have for your console. So that's fine. They're made exclusively for the PlayStation 4, but there's really not much else that's like really different from this collection at all.
Okay, so would you say this is the ultimate collection for everyone to own? Everyone who's interested in getting Kingdom Hearts 3 should own this. Would you say that?
This is the definitive versions of these games. If you've already played the games, I feel like you don't need to get this, especially now in an environment where we have like all these open world games. There's like so many 40+ hour games, and Kingdom Hearts, every single one of those Kingdom Hearts games requires a huge time investment. So it's a little bit hard to recommend now at this point in time. But for anybody that's never played the Kingdom Hearts games, period, like you've never played 1.5 or 2.5, or you just want to get a friend that's never played any of the games into the series, give them this collection, because these are the definitive versions of them. Now, let's be real for a second. There are a couple things, especially in the older games, that don't hold up well today. I still really believe that. And I said that even when I was playing Kingdom Hearts 1.5, where it was Final Mix and like they had some adjustments to the game. I still think there are some things that feel a little bit archaic because of over time, and we had more games in the series to really refine a lot of those elements, especially after playing 2.8 and playing the fragmentary passage section with Aqua. But it's still, these are the definitive versions of those games to dive into. I don't think that they're mandatory, but other than collection purposes, or if you've never played any of the games prior to this.
Cool. One thing that, I'm quite excited about as well is that, this being on the PS4 now means that a lot of people are going going to be able to stream footage of them playing these games now, which, you know, there's probably going to be a lot more content from Kingdom
People have been doing
Hearts
that
from
though
people.
for the longest. They've been doing that ever since the PS3 versions.
I mean, yeah, there's always been methods to stream it, but a lot of people don't particularly, you know how to do it, the hardware side of it. But with, you know,
Mhm.
PS4 having those facilities built in, I'm sure it's going to be a lot more accessible for people to stream the content now. But
True.
what I wanted to ask is, because sometimes, you know, games have a block so that you can't stream certain points in the story. Have you tried to stream this collection at all
I
to the
haven't had a
PS4?
chance to stream it, but even when you're not streaming, like most games that do have stuff like that, because I've had a couple examples recently within the last couple months that have done that, even though I wasn't streaming them. The game doesn't really do that. I don't even remember any of the stuff from 2.8 really doing that at all, which is fine. You know, I don't think that it's really important. I think at that point, like if you're already playing the game and people are watching you, it doesn't really matter. So I'm glad that that's not really a big thing right now with the collection.
Okay. Oh yeah, I suppose for you it would have been different anyway because you stream using the actual hardware, like you use the, you know.
Even then, it still has the same thing that pops up. Pops up with a little message that says like you've entered a non-captured section. And I remember it did that recently with the Berserk game that I reviewed, and a couple others that it's done in the past. But I know I didn't notice that in any of the games that I played. Because granted, I didn't complete every single one of those games. I don't think you need to, you know, as someone that's reviewing this, you don't need to complete Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 and Birth by Sleep all over again. Again, that's 40 plus hours per game. But you know, just getting deep enough into them, just see like what's different or what's, you know, interesting about them. I never really experienced anything like that.
Cool, that's cool. So this game is out this week, right? It's out. Is it
It's
out
already
right
out
now?
now. It's out
Oh,
now.
it's out now.
It's
Okay,
out ever
cool.
since Tuesday.
So so yeah, everyone go get that if you have an interest in getting this collection. If you haven't played the games yet, I definitely recommend it. I will be picking this up at some point because I want to get caught up before the third game. But yeah, that's JJ's thoughts on the game. When can they expect your full review on the website?
Now, because there's a lot of stuff happening, and again, there's a lot of new games that we have going up on the site now as far as reviews. Like I just got Has Been Heroes not too long ago, and I have to play that one also for review. It's gonna come. I'm gonna try to get it up this week, at least you know within the time frame of everything happening and stuff. So look for it soon. Again, I'm still writing it up now. For all we know, at this point, it could be up tomorrow, but I don't want to give a definite date and then obviously it not be done. Because again, please bear with us. There's a lot of games coming out. We got Persona 5 coming up very soon. That's just another beast that we're going to have to deal with. We're probably going to talk about it at some point on turn-based. But again, there's a lot happening.
Yeah, for sure. It's busy times here at the Coalition. So yeah, bear with us. There'll be some footage. There'll be some coverage of, you know, Kingdom Hearts coming to the site soon. So definitely wait on that. But yeah, that's pretty much, you know, all we had to say today regarding, you know, Final Fantasy 15 episode Gladiolus and Kingdom Hearts. It was a pleasure to be here today streaming this for free, but definitely check out the Patreon because we will be making a lot more exclusive content and discussions regarding, you know, RPG games on there.
Also, Gary, I want to mention this because more of the people that are watching this that are Kingdom Hearts fans or Final Fantasy fans need to see this because we have it up on the site now ever since we got back from PAX. I have an exclusive interview with Okayama-san again and Ito-san for Kingdom Hearts Unchained Key, Kingdom Hearts Union Cross. We talked about everything that was brand new coming to the game that should be coming sometime down the line later this year. I think that they were saying sometime in the summer, maybe afterwards. Whenever you know they decide to release that content, and also with what is it the producer of Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, I actually got a chance to talk with him as well at PAX East, and all those interviews again exclusives are up on the site right now, which you guys could go check out.
Yeah, those were two dope interviews for sure. If you're listening to this on the site, I will link those below so you guys can go check those out for sure. Those were two dope interviews. So yeah, definitely check those out. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Do you have any shout outs before we get off air?
Just shout out to everybody listening. Shout out to everybody in the comment section, sending us tweets and feedback. We really appreciate you guys. Shout out to the patrons. Thank you for all of your support, allowing us to keep doing some awesome stuff and keep bringing you guys some great content. Shout out to everybody else that just loves games, who loves RPGs, who listens to this podcast. Again, like Gary said, we got more stuff coming down the line. I'm pretty sure we're going to have a lot more to talk about after Persona 5. We're going to have a lot more to talk about as we get closer to E3. We will be at E3 this year, so definitely get hyped up for that in June. There's some other stuff coming very, very soon, which I'll be able to talk about within the next couple of weeks, which is some very exciting stuff that Gary, me and you got to talk about after this. But there's a lot of things happening, and there's a lot of great stuff that, you know, a lot of you guys that follow us or has been following us for a very long time should be very excited about, and we hope that you guys will enjoy when it's finally out there.
For sure. And don't forget, we'll be back for the co-op episode 200 this weekend. That's going to be a very special episode.
Get hype.
Check us out on that as well. But yeah, that's it for now. Peace out, people. Take care.
Take it easy, everybody.